Welcome. We're here today with Dan Wessels, a lyricist and composer, and Maureen Borillo, book writer. And they wrote one of our 12 Fringe shows that we premiered at the Hollywood Fringe Festival this year. So we wanted to have them come in and talk to you about the experience. So why don't you guys start with how you got put together as a team and how that worked out and how you came up with the original idea for your show. Maybe start by telling us the title of your show.
Oh my gosh. I can never remember it.
A zombie,
a zombie, a dragon, and a werewolf, vampire who sparkles. I always, every single time I was writing that title down, I would have to re-look up if it was a vampire who sparkles or a vampire that sparkles.
Did that teach you anything about titling your show?
Yeah. I need to learn grammar is the lesson I learned.
Okay. So talk to us a little bit about, you started this partnership back in last fall when we were putting teams together for the Fringe. So how did that happen?
Truthfully, it was because I was busy and everyone already partnered up with each other. And so Dan showed up a month later.
Yeah, no, it was the September meeting, I believe, and it was my first meeting, and I walked in and I didn't know anybody, and I'm kind of getting the lay of the land, and everybody had partnered up, and we're like, hey, let's do this, let's dive in.
And it seems like it worked out well. You guys seem to have a great collaboration.
Yeah, I feel like we had similar expectations of the show and similar senses of like what we wanted to do. Just make something fun and fast and silly.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, ridiculous being the key word.
Right. And you came to this project with different relationships with New Musicals Inc. because Maureen, you've been a member since like 5 or 6 years ago, or is it longer than that?
A decade.
A decade,
Yeah.
really. And you've already you've come through our core curriculum program more than once because you've come through in different, as a book writer and then as a lyricist.
Yes.
And you also came in one year when we needed an extra book writer to round out our teams. So you've actually written 2 15-minute musicals with us already as part of core. So you've been around for a while. Dan, as you just mentioned, came to us brand new this fall because you just came to Los Angeles recently.
Well, I come to Los Angeles a couple of years ago, but I had heard that John Sparks was teaching out here, and I had done his workshop in Chicago back in 2008, 2009. It was like right when I graduated from college.
Right,
I went
that's
straight
the
into
sister workshop to what we did, a very similar program to what we have
similar
here.
program. Yeah, I did the first year of that and went through the 15-minute musical process there. So
although you were new to us, you weren't really new to John and the workshop process.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess I should also mention that in college, I went to Columbia College Chicago, and Philip Seward was my composition teacher.
Philip teaches our music lab.
He teaches the music lab, yeah. So, whenever he comes out here to teach, we'll usually like grab lunch or coffee or something like that. So I was always somewhat aware that this was going on, and it was literally a change of employment where I'm like, oh, I have a little bit of disposable income, and this is something that's always been in the back of my mind. And I finally just reached out to John and said, okay, what do I do? How do I get involved?
And it happened to be our first Fringe year.
Yeah.
So how did you guys come up with the idea for a zombie, a dragon, and a vampire who sparkles?
I think it was during that first meeting in September. I remember jotting down all sorts of ideas for very contained spaces that musicals could take place in. I think I had like 4 or 5 that I was like, here are ideas, Maureen.
Yeah.
And I think that was the one that you had responded to, was the Dungeons and Dragons angle.
Right, and so you wound up writing a musical about some high school kids who were playing a game of Dungeons and Dragons. And had either of you had any previous experience with D&D?
I mean, yeah, I had very limited. When I was living in Chicago, I lived in a building along with some other friends that were in a different apartment, and they would have game night every Wednesday, and I would go down and play with them, and they were improvisers, they were comedians. So like my entire experience is this very skewed version of just messing around and not really accomplishing anything, but just hanging out with friends and doing it. Like I don't think I ever played the game correctly, which totally fed into this show. Like no one plays it correctly in the show.
I have to say one of my favorite things about the show, among others, because I thought it was a lot of fun, was the moment that the song that was, and let me now explain the rules, and so the character was literally rules were, but it didn't go on for very long because eventually one of them just said, that's enough, who cares, we'll just play it by ear, which was a wonderful way of giving us just a little bit of an insight into what the rules were, but saying to us, okay, come on, it's too complicated, we don't really need to know in order to enjoy this show. So I thought that was a great way to approach it, a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. It was definitely, that was the hardest song to crack, for sure. I think there were 3 or 4 different versions
of the rules.
I think at one point Maureen just handed me a scene, just like, I think it should go like this.
I think that was for the opening, or was it for the second?
You did that for the opening as well.
So
but
in other words, you wrote it as a scene and then hand it to Dan and say, here, turn this into a musical scene. Lyricize it and musicalize it.
That definitely happened with the second song, I know. I think the first song I had come in with an idea and you were able to mold
because we had the scene and we had the song, and they didn't exactly mesh yet. And so I was just looking through it and trying to format it like as a story. And so I just jotted things down, and I was supposed to type it out, but then I ran out of time. I had to go to work, so I just took a picture of all my like scribbles. And
scribbles on the page, and I'm like, okay, I can figure this out. And it did turn out really well, and it's great to have that out. Being both a composer and a lyricist on this one, it was great to have that outside eye being like, that doesn't make sense, or this should flow better here.
I mean, as a song by itself, it was a lot of fun, but if we wanted to get from point A to B and have it make sense and go through the story, then
you needed a little bit more.
Yeah.
Great. Well, that leads me to a question about how was the process for you of the way we organized it, that every month you came to our workshop sessions to present some material, whatever you had ready, and get a bit of feedback from the staff and from your peers who are also going through the process. How was that useful? Deadlines, that sort of thing?
I need deadlines. Yeah, for sure.
It was clear because so we called each other at like 9:30 in the morning the day it was due, and we were like reading through it and still trying to make sure that everything matched up.
Yeah, it got done to the wire. I think I think it was a really good idea that we really allotted the time to do the final checks, because we gave ourselves, it was due on the Saturday, and we're like, we have to have everything done on Thursday, because the amount of rehearsal time that it takes for, well, it says this in the sheet music, but it says this in the script, which one do you want? It totally sucks everything out of the rehearsal process.
True, so you gave yourselves that time to read through and make sure that what was on the paper was what you actually wanted.
Together, yeah, that was
harder than it sounds.
That was at least a 2-hour phone call.
Yeah.
And then I guess backing up to have to be able to bring in all of the steps, to have the outline, and have that approved, and have that. Have the feedback from the teachers about that. I mean, one of my favorite parts of the show was just a slight nudge from John of like, no, at the very end, she should make him kiss her, but use a line from earlier in the show to do that. And I'm like, oh, that's why you're the teacher, kind of a thing. But it was just a very slight nudge that, and he's like, I think this would work out really well. You figure out how to make it happen. But
he was pointing you in a direction of how to tie things up for your major character, who was who was going through the process.
Yeah.
Through the game.
Yeah, and it was really wonderful to just.
That's crazy.
Crazy fun, and like silly and ridiculous, but like at no time did we ever get well, why this? Why aren't you,
Everyone embraced the silliness of it and just said, how do we make it as clear and as fun as possible?
Exactly.
Within the silly universe that you've created.
Yeah, like I felt a lot of freedom to do what I wanted to with it.
And then once the show got cast and you went into rehearsals and you got to work with people, you ran into some glitches that were,
that made the show.
I think, well, that's an interesting thing to talk about. So talk about that a little bit, about what happened and how that changed the show and how that made you feel about it.
Well, I think the big one is
there were two major things.
Yeah.
The first one was that we had originally written it for 6 people. And then we found out 2 weeks before the performance that 2 people decided to
drop out, I think is the word.
Yeah.
Right? Yes. And suddenly you found yourself with 4 actors to play 6 roles.
Yeah. So was the cutout your idea? Yeah, that was really wonderful. So luckily it was the 2 people. We basically had written a 2-person chorus that would play all of the imaginary characters
within the game.
Within the game, yeah. So whenever they're just in the basement, they're just in a basement. But whenever lights change and they're in the game world, these 2 people would play all of these different characters and morph and sing back up and speak as different characters. And those were the 2 that left.
We were saying, though, that was a positive thing that they both left at the same time.
Yes,
because if we were left with one and not the other, then
it would have been trickier. So you wound up using these large cutouts of what was it, Princess Leia and Gandalf,
Yes.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
And the other 4 actors manipulated those in a fun way. And a part of what was great about it was that your cast, the 4 that were left, totally embraced it. They were like, no problem, we'll make this work.
They were wonderful.
And your director, they all just banded together and said, we don't care, we're going to make it work with the 4 of us and have even more fun.
And they did. They really did.
They did. And then the other issue you had, was it in a rehearsal?
It was the Tuesday before. And I'd say the first 30 seconds of the rehearsal, one of our actors,
He jumped off a cube or something like that?
I think he just did like a little twist or a pirouette or something.
I didn't realize it was 30 seconds in the rehearsal.
Right. And he twisted his ankle so severely that he had to do the entire run using a little scooter cart on his knee because he could. But again, you guys totally embraced that. Wrote a couple of lines to make it make sense, and then the actors once again embraced it so much that anyone who saw the show, I'm sure, first of all, thought it was part of the show. Right?
Yeah. And they would say, how did you come up with that?
And I'm sure you must have walked away thinking, hey, let's make it part of the show. It was so much fun.
Yeah, it definitely is. If it happens again, I'm all for Brad must be crippled in some way.
And again, your actor embraced it so much, and because he was constantly being killed within the game, and his character loved being killed, and all of his shenanigans when he was being killed were just magnified by the fact that he had to do it on this scooter, and he would die in various different ways on his scooter.
Yeah,
it was hysterical.
Yeah, there was also that added element of danger for me of like, oh, don't hurt him more, don't hurt him. Yeah.
He didn't seem to care.
Yeah, he gave everything to that part. It was really wonderful.
Right.
Yeah.
So, in general, is this something that you would want to do again? Did this inspire you to want to do more Fringe shows, or are you thinking of doing something more with this particular show?
Well, it definitely is a great feeling when you turn in that integrated script and score and look at it and be like, whoa, we wrote like 85 pages or something
like
crazy,
that,
and be like, this is what it takes to do 15 minutes. But you do that and you feel amazing. Like, oh, what other 100 pages are in me that I can hand off to someone else? So yeah, I turned it in, and I immediately like, okay, what's next? What can I do next? Kind of thing. With this show, I don't know. There's been a little bit of our music director had mentioned like, oh, a friend of mine does like a short festival. So would you mind if I pass it off to him? Or
Right, submit the show to some of the shorter festivals that are around the country.
Yeah, and I think it would be fun. I know for a moment the director wanted to cast actual teenagers in
Yes,
these
that
roles.
was the original idea.
The original plan, and it could work well in something like that.
Yeah, I think she found because we were doing the project in the summer, she suddenly discovered that these kids already all had plans for the summer, and suddenly because she works with a lot of teenagers, Alison Kalmus, your director, and so she thought she had access to these great performers, and then found out they were all busy for the summer.
Yeah.
Mind you, I think we were able to come up with a wonderful cast that really brought the show to life and embraced it.
They really did.
And through all of the issues, and really just had a lot of fun with the show.
Sure.
Now, you only got 5 performances at the Fringe Festival, but were you able to come and see them all, and how did that affect you to get to watch it multiple times?
Well, I was able to make it to 4 of them. I had to miss opening night of all nights because I had another show I couldn't find a sub for. But yeah, it was really wonderful to see how like things that hit every night, things that audiences responded to every time, and then like the little things that audiences. Maybe one audience loved this one bit or another audience loved this other bit, or what's that line that's really precious to me that no one got. That's always a humbling experience, but I'm like, it's in there just for me, kind of a thing.
Okay. We've been asking everybody that we've been interviewing a particular question, which I'd like to get your reaction to. If you were to suddenly find that you woke up tomorrow morning and someone had handed you $100 million for developing new musicals, what would you want to do with that money?
Go get breakfast first. I'd like a really nice breakfast.
In Aruba.
Yeah,
perhaps.
in Aruba. Yeah. Hop on that plane to Aruba. It's a business expense because I'm talking about the musical while I'm doing that. Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing I would do is book a rehearsal or book a performance spot or a workshop because of the aforementioned deadline needing because
that inspires you, motivates you.
Yeah, I could just sit on that money for a long time and be like, well, I'm working on it, it's coming up. But when I know that there's a date that actors are walking in and they need something to do, then I'll do it. Yeah, I guess, pay the actors well to be there and not drop out of the show. Or baby them, don't twist your ankle.
But it's okay. It was cheaper to have Gandalf and Leia anyway.
Yeah.
What about you? What would you do with the money, Maureen?
If it was specifically $100 million earmarked for musical theater, well, I live in Orange County, so the commute here is a little rough. So
Get your own helicopter?
I'd probably buy a space or rent a space here in Orange County, and then maybe get you guys some nice cars to drive back and forth.
Take that. Well, that segues into the final thing I'd like to talk about. I'd like to go for a bit of a blatant commercial and say that as writer members of New Musicals, Inc., can you talk a little bit about what that means to be part of that community and how valuable it is to you?
Yeah, no, it's...
If it is.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. In addition to knowing that you've got a meeting coming up that you want to show people things, you want to show what you're up to, and like I mentioned before, just the fact that whatever I bring in, I know that it's not going to be looked down upon because of what it is or the content of it. It's everybody here approaches every subject with an open mind, and how can we make this the best product that we think you want to get out of it. That's what I really liked about the whole experience, and why I'm excited to be bringing in some really crazy stuff later on. So get ready.
Oh, great,
Yeah.
great. How about you, Maureen? You keep coming back for more. What keeps bringing you back?
Yeah, I've been here for a while. You know, before I found NMI, previously A&MT, I didn't even think it was an option to write musical theater. I just thought it was something that happened in New York. So it's great to find a community here in Southern California. And like Dan said, a lot of people here respect all the writers. And it's fun to come together and share all of our new works.
Great. Yeah, I think we had a wonderful time at the Fringe, a collaborative venture for all of us. So thank you very much for taking part, and we'll see what's next for all of us. Thanks for coming tonight.
Thanks.